Hey, welcome to the show. Before we get going, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that this has been a hard week to be a wrestling fan. We've lost Terry Funk and Windham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt, all within a matter of days. Two very prolific stars from their own generations. And two beloved people for many reasons, not just inside the ring, but as we're hearing stories about both from outside, it's hard not to want to delve deeper and deeper into their lives. And this week's episode was already planned to be this special Ask Meltzer Anything, which we're going to stick with this week. But I just wanted you to know that it's not due to any sort of ignorance or washing away of the importance of the passing of these two wrestlers who, as fans, we've gotten to know and love through generations. So Terry Funk, there's no words to put in how much of an impact that guy had on pro wrestling globally. And for Bray Wyatt, Windham Rotunda, the man behind that, I think a lot of people are just smarting from how raw it is to have lost someone so young. And a lot of people were anticipating to see what was going to happen next. What was he going to do next? And now we're in a position where he's going to be remembered and loved, and that's what he's going to do next. We're not done talking about Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt, and we're going to continue to do that. And next week, we'll take a bit more of a deep dive, but there are some great tribute podcasts out there from people that actually knew both these guys, and anything I could say would pale in comparison to the stories you can hear out there. So look them up. Look up the people that have been around those individuals and enjoy them. Share in the memories. Hear stories you didn't know. And as for here, we will talk about both of them. But for now, out of gratitude, we pay tribute to Terry Funk and Windham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt.
Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let's give the people what they want. Professional wrestling.
With Mike McGuire.
The happiest Canadian camper in the world. Tell me when I'm telling lies. Give me a hell yeah.
Well, this is a special edition for the all-in weekend of McGuire on Wrestling. It is the Ask Meltzer Anything episode. You've been kind enough, Dave, to open yourself up to any sort of fan questioning here, so thank you for that. The good news is there's nothing too brutal here. As this is posting, I guess, you're actually in the UK at this point. Yes. So, are you a good traveler? Do you like flying overseas to places like this?
I don't know. I mean, on the flight, I don't. I just wish it was over, but yeah, I don't stress over it or anything.
Can you sleep on a flight?
Sometimes, not always. Sometimes.
I finally managed to get over that hump. Because the longest time, I still can't sleep when someone else is driving. I'm just that paranoid person. But when I'm in an airplane, I finally let it go. I was like, I don't know how to fly a plane any better. So it's the way it is. Okay, well, you're going to be doing a Q&A over there. We thought we'd open it up to those listening here. We've got some questions from around the world. It's pretty cool, but we'll start in North America here. Our first one is from Jose in the Golden Valley, and he has a question about WrestleMania 19 for you. Mm-hmm. He says, when you talked about the botched shooting star press from Brock Lesnar on Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19, you said the match was on the verge of being match of the year until that moment. How exactly does that one spot affect the match?
It just did, I mean, it took the match from being spectacular to being, oh my God, because the last, whatever it was, seconds were just like impromptu and everything. I mean, it was still an awesome match, but it didn't win match of the year. I think if 300-pound Brock Lesnar, because he was probably about 300 at that point, had hit a shooting star press in the WrestleMania main event, regardless of what happened in the rest of the match, I think that people would some people would be voting it for match of the year and it would be way up in the rankings. And it wasn't, it didn't win or anything like that. So yeah, it made a difference.
So I think that this is fair to say too, you're not the person that determines match of the year solely on this. You hold a vote.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's people vote, and it is what it is. And I mean, historically, of course, I don't think there'll ever be a match of the year that I didn't think is a good match. I think that, it was funny because, whenever I get like that criticism, I actually went to cage matches a couple weeks ago, and I go, you know what? I'm really curious to find out what is the best match, and they have hundreds of people. I don't know if they have thousands, but they have hundreds.
You're talking about the cage match website. Yeah.
Right. Voting on, basically, star ratings on matches. Because I actually thought it would end up being a WWE match. What match was the highest rated in history that I gave, less than like say 4 stars to, where I would go like, okay, I'm off by at least a star.
Right.
Because anything under that, you're pretty much agreeing anyway.
Yeah.
And it did come down to number 372. Which was a Japanese women's hardcore match from decades ago, which I gave 3.5 stars to. That was not rated by their website as the number 372 best match of all time. And so that was the highest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you look at those top 100, 200. I mean, I'm in agreement. I'm not off at all. So it's like, are there matches that I gave 5 to that they rated a 4 3/4 or 4.5 higher? Of course, but it's all, once you're quarter, half star, it's all the same anyway.
I'm happy for everyone's sake, by the way, to say that not one of these questions, and there's like almost a couple dozen questions here, not one of them have to do with the star ratings this week.
Good.
So, and we're not going to do that either because we've done it to death. If you want to go back, McGuireShow.podbean.com, you can hear Dave and I talk all about the star ratings. It's done. Our buddy Jake from the Windy City has written in, and he has an opinion question for you and then a title belt question for you. The first one, he says, there have been those in the business such as Jim Ross and Stone Cold Steve Austin saying that if a wrestler doesn't aspire to be the world champion, they have no business being a wrestler. He says, I understand that not everyone can be the world champion, but I agree with this stance because in any other industry, in any other sport, you want to ascend to the top and be the best. If you're in the wrestling industry just to get a paycheck and don't have a desire to ascend to the very top, you're just complacent. Do you stand to agree with this or not? Do you agree or disagree with this?
I don't agree with that because there's people who live in reality. And I mean, I guess with an AEW championship or only certain people are going to have it. And there's certain physical characteristics that you need, but that should not blacklist you out of wrestling if you want to be a wrestler. I mean,
nice.
Now, if you would say, should you want to be? Yes. But even so, if there's someone, let's just say there's someone who has a family, doesn't want to do the travel, but really wants to be a wrestler and realistically knows that they're never going to be a world champion, there's nothing wrong with you going into pro wrestling and doing it at your level, being an independent wrestler and having fun. I would gather to say that most of your independent wrestlers deep down do not think that they're going to be world champions. Some do, but it's like, I don't know. I know why people say that. And if you are of the right physical makeup, perhaps you could even say that. But in this business where physical makeup is so important, some people will never have that physical makeup. And because of that, they're never going to be it. And that's just living in reality.
Yeah. Who doesn't want more money? Who doesn't want to be a good, good hand at their job? Sure. But I mean, I get what you're saying too. And that's a great perspective to bring into it is like, what if you just wanted to be a wrestler? You're happy where you're at. Like, what if you want to have a family and be home for them every day and you just want to wrestle in, within short drives of your house every weekend? There's nothing wrong. Got a buddy who worked at the fire department in the Bay Area who wrestled for 30 years. Very happy that he wrestled. Never once thought he was going to be going to WCW or WWF and was perfectly fine with that. And I'll transpose it to broadcasting here for a second because this has just triggered a whole bunch in my mind. Sorry. But I was in country radio for a number of years. I don't know if you follow the country music industry at all, but it is award central. You have national awards to regional awards, to state, to provincial, to city awards. Everybody in that genre specifically, even the radio people, were becoming more and more motivated about trying to win these awards. And the more I look back at it, I was one of them for the longest time. There's the Canadian Country Music Association, and I'm not dogging them at all because I do believe they do some good stuff. But just the whole thing of chasing awards rather than going like, hey, I'm doing what I love. I'm getting paid to do what I love. That should be the bonus. Now, granted, a champion in a major company will get more money and that sort of thing, but there is something to be said for being content, isn't there?
Yeah, it's all about happiness in life, I think, more than anything else. But I mean, yeah, should you have some aspirations? Yeah, but I can't make that blanket statement that if you don't want to be world champion, you shouldn't be in the business. I couldn't say that. I would strongly disagree with that.
Jake's second question is a lot easier one. I don't know if we've talked about this or not before. Do you have a favorite championship belt from history?
No, not at all.
Curtis from Edmonton has a question about Japanese wrestling here. He says, do you think becoming IWGP champion has helped or hurt Sonata as far as his character and his legacy go?
The fact that he has it helps. It's better than never having it. So I think it helps, but it has not helped greatly, because if it would have helped greatly when he comes out to these matches, like when he came to Forbidden Door, the reaction would be very different. They don't, he has a belt. They don't see him as champion, and that's the difference between, and that's telling you also, how things have changed, because before you could make a star by giving him a belt. And now that's not, it's not the case. It's the man who makes the belt. And it's always been, but it's more now than ever before. It's the man who makes the belt. It's not the belt who makes the man. And you can put the belt on someone, and if it's the wrong guy, you don't make him a top guy. But is he a bigger star because he's had it? Yes, a little bit bigger.
Okay, fair enough. I know that Curtis is a big fan of Sonata, but I felt that Sonata's kind of been flat. And I wonder if that's indicative, like you said, like the match he had ended up being against Jungle Boy. Nothing against Jack Perry, but again, it was, like you said, at Forbidden Door, it was a bit of a flat entrance, a bit of a flat happening, really. Yeah.
I mean, he's not super charismatic. He's athletically incredible. But it's funny because there's people like Evil and Sonata as a tag team or Sonata as a challenger. I mean, I've seen it works, but some people aren't cut out to be world champion. And it's funny because before the Okada Sonata match, when everyone was going, he's got to win it for this reason and this reason, this reason. And I was like, well, we'll find out, because if he wins it, and it works, then he did. But if it was me, my gut was that IWGP title is a very special title that has been very well protected. And in the last 12 years, only the elite of the elite have held it. And to me, Sonata was not going to, and it has to carry the company. To me, Sonata was not charismatic enough for that spot. And when he won it, it's not that he hasn't had some good matches, but it really hit me. And then, in the Tsuji match, because Tsuji really does have that charisma, it really hit me watching as that match was unfolding, how, my God, they really need Tsuji as champion, because, Okada's Okada. He doesn't need the belt anymore. But should he be in the picture? Yes. But they need a new guy with the belt, but Sonata's not the guy. Tsuji's the guy.
All right. Let's go to Darius from Yonkers. Love this. I've never talked to anybody. Well, I guess I've met Tommy Dreamer, so that's somebody from Yonkers. But Darius in Yonkers. He's got a question about, we talked about this a little bit last week on the show about the backstage drama. So let's see if we can motor through this. Since the drama involving CM Punk and the EVPs of AEW started last year, the sole and only negative stories have come out for only Punk, even if they turn out to be false reporting. Why?
What's been false reporting?
Well, hold on. There's more here. So you tell me, and then we'll get through this, and we'll
and actually, I mean, I have seen negative stuff I've seen negative. It's just funny. It's a funny thing. Because one of the AEW wrestlers, it was actually about the Cash Wheeler thing. It was meant as a joke. It's just like, hopefully he's not getting suspended, but he goes like, or stripped of the title. But my God, in our company, guys got stripped of the title basically for being attacked. You know what I mean?
Well, and this goes on further, though. This goes on further. So let me get through this part. He says, why isn't any of the negativity surrounding AEW blamed on Omega and the Bucks? Both Dave and Brian do their best to defend Kenny and the Bucks. Okay.
As far as
their presence in the company.
I've given both. It's like, if you read the story from week one, which was more Punk side than their side for actually for the first couple of months, because Punk side was the only side I heard from with details. And I still to this day have never heard from Omega and the Bucks as far as their side of what actually happened in that room, because they're not allowed to talk about it. And I know one of them told me, I can't wait to tell you when it happened, the week it happened. He goes, I can't wait for this to come out. I can't wait to tell you. And then a couple months later, it was just like, by the way, I'm never going to tell you because we signed something and we'll never talk about it. So that was that. But yeah, I think you have to actually read the Observer. I think there's like people who are, now, I mean, as far as, look, who threw the first punch? And, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, Adam Page did do the first promo. At the same time, people will go back, well, what was Punk's role with Colt? And, all of that stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff that started and should have ended even before Adam did the promo. Because
I think with all respect to Darius here, the writer too, I mean, I don't want to go back and rehash everything here. He does bring up one interesting point here. This is the last thing we'll go on this, Dave, because we've talked this thing to death now, the horse's glue, so to speak. But this is an interesting point. He says, if they are supposed to be vice presidents of the company and locker room leaders, why are they allowed not to communicate with talent and continually say no to meetings with people they have problems with? This is all internal stuff.
Okay, but here's the thing. From what I have been told, they have never been, that's a company thing, not their thing. They've never been asked. When it came to the meetings with FTR, they had the meetings. They're wrestling it all in. When they were asked to do the match with FTR by Tony Khan, they said yes with no reservations. So, that's like now, if they were asked to do a match with Punk, would they say yes? I mean, my gut is no. They would say no. But the point is, they've never been asked. And but I mean, as far as all that goes, at some point, look, if Punk would have apologized, and they would have said, no, we're not accepting your apology, that'd be one thing. And I would probably have a very different opinion. But that hasn't happened, and these things keep happening. And so it's just like I said, time heals all wounds. And they, for the last year, the clock should have been ticking. And the clock, every time the clock starts ticking, another thing happens every third week. Most of which you don't hear about, but it's there. And, like what happened last week when you started hearing about all of it all over again, it's because most people wanted it to go away, and the little things didn't come up until all of a sudden they flooded out again.
This is, what this is? This is the Brett screwed bread of our generation. This is going to be this thing that's going to live on for 20 years.
Yeah. Brett wasn't wrong. He had a contract.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's going to be the screw job all over again, basically, as far as fan mythos goes, not as far as actual events go. But
yeah. I mean, it's like if Brett didn't have the contract, if Brett didn't have creative control, it'd be a completely different issue. But he had that, and to me, that makes, in that specific case, that's an open and shut case, and it's always been. But people will argue that to death too.
Okay. My old friend Joe Aguinaldo has a question, and he wants to know about shooters here. He says, there are stories about guys like Lou Thez, Dick Hutton, and others, and a host of old wrestlers being legit shooters. Who, in your opinion, Dave, was legit? And is there anyone today that would be considered legit outside of Brock, Kurt, or Shayna?
Oh, God, there's so many of them that have good, pretty good backgrounds. I mean, Matt Riddle was a good UFC fighter, good MMA fighter. Bobby Lashley was all right, not bad. I mean, not world beaters, but I mean, as far as like you're talking about amateur wrestlers, look, there were, Gable Steveson. Gable Steveson is the best actual wrestler, and now granted he's only had one match, but he is the best wrestler that, or at least heavyweight. And I would say, period. I mean, Kevin Randleman was really good. Kurt Angle was really good. But I would say the best in history would be Gable Steveson by far, because he may be, he is arguably the best American heavyweight in history, period, let alone someone who went into pro wrestling. Now, is he a submission guy? No. But could he be? Yeah, probably. But if you're going to look at you could just look at, for modern guys, it's the modern guys are going to be the guys that have competed in MMA at a high level. And, there's there's dozens and dozens. There's young Minoru Suzuki, Ken Shamrock, Sakuraba. I mean, Sakuraba is a legend in MMA. It's at a weight class, but still, what he did in his weight class was unbelievable.
Where would you put Dan Severn in that?
I mean, Dan Severn not at that level, but certainly Dan Severn was a near that level. I mean, he was a successful MMA fighter. Dan Severn was a great amateur wrestler. I mean, it was one of those things where he barely missed. In 1984. In the Olympic trials, he lost to Lubanik, but I mean, he beat Lubanik and lost to Lubanik. I mean, they had tight matches. They were very, very close, and some people thought that Severn should have represented the country, and Lou went and won the gold medal. So Dan Severn, if he had gone to the Olympics, probably would have medaled in '84. That's how good a wrestler that Dan Severn was.
Wow. All right, we're going to head to the UK now. Sam from the TSC podcast, who are friends of ours. Do you have a dream match with any two wrestlers from any era? Like you could mix and match any two wrestlers that you would love to see together, and why would that be that match?
There's a million of them. I don't know. God, like one dream match that I would like to see.
I'm on the Bret Hart Kurt Angle wagon. I would love to see that one.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably Bret Hart's too. Or one of them. I'd love to see Kenta Kobashi against Kenny Omega. I would love to see Will Ospreay against Shawn Michaels. I would love to see Bret Hart against Kenny Omega. Oh my God. Because that match would be absolutely, I mean, I just think, thinking of Wembley, it's like, and no disrespect for Davey, because he had a great match with Bret. But if you put the Kenny Omega of, let's say, 5 years ago, or even the Kenny Omega of today at Wembley Stadium with that crowd and Bret Hart is the guy with him, oh my God, they'd probably have the greatest match of all time, or one of them. I would love to see Ricky Steamboat. Against a lot of the guys today.
Oh yeah.
A lot of the top guys. Ricky Steamboat against Hiroshi Tanahashi in its own weird way. Zack Sabre Jr. against Billy Robinson. Zack Sabre Jr. against Bryan Danielson, which actually could happen, is one of my dream matches.
There you go. Then Lee in the UK, Lee Tires. Okay, this is kind of a ratings question, but not really. What is the lowest rated match you've ever seen live?
Live? Man, I don't know. I just remember.
We have to go to the archives on that one?
Yeah, someone would have to look it up. I remember I was at San Jose once and I saw a John Studd, Mr. Wrestling 2 match that was so ungodly horrible. But it wasn't filled with botches. They just didn't do anything. I mean, I've probably seen matches with with Lucha Libre matches, where it just falls apart and it's a complete disaster in the old days when, you're trying to do stuff that you have no business doing. I mean, I would say that probably, and I can't come up with the names, but I've seen some unbelievably horrible Lucha Libre is one of those things where when it's done great, it's just unbelievable. And when it's bad, it's worse than American Pro Wrestling when Lucha Libre is bad, because it's just a disaster. Yeah.
Here's the one I'm going to throw an ad-lib question onto this. Did you rate, or did you have a rating for Inoki Ali?
No.
I
don't rate shoots, and also before I started rating matches. But
fair enough.
No, that match was a disaster in a different way.
Okay,
but but it is one of the most important matches, and it's one of the most interesting matches, backstory match itself that there's ever been. I mean, when you look at just the fact that it happened, it still blows my mind. That it happened and it was a shoot blows my mind, and the reason it was a shoot blows my mind even more, because it was supposed to be a work and Ali wouldn't do the job at the last minute, and there was so much money involved that they had to do something, and so they came up with this shoot, which is unbelievable that you're coming up with a shoot at the last minute, because in a shoot, you would think that you would be wanting to train for it for months and months and months, and that didn't happen. Two guys went out there and they did. I mean, granted, Inoki might as well have had his hands tied behind his back with the rule set, but he went in there and did it, because he had to. And, what Inoki did was very, very criticized at the time, because people didn't know what the rules were. But in hindsight, I got to say that when you're not allowed to do so many different things, and you're in there with the boxer Muhammad Ali, who was one of the greatest heavyweight boxers of all time, and you're going in a fight with him with your weapons taken away, that's, no matter what anyone ever wants to say about Antonio Inoki, that's balls to go in there in that situation.
Oh, I would lay on my back too, and then I would roll around to my front and keep doing so until I was out of the ring and running towards the airport. So
yeah,
that's me. Garrett in Yorkshire, you've been covering wrestling for 5 decades, Dave. Do you have a wrestler of the decade for each decade you've been covering?
I could think about it. Let's see, since the 70s, you could argue Inoki, you could argue Bruno Sammartino, you could argue Harley. 80s, Ric Flair. 90s, God.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Wrestling got so good.
Yeah, best to me, I think in my mind was Kobashi. 2010s Okada, 2000s maybe Tanahashi. So yeah,
okay, all right.
Maybe with Tanahashi was late 2000s. For the whole decade of the 2000s, maybe Kurt. Kurt was the one who was voted wrestler of the decade. So maybe Kurt for the 2000s. Kurt Angle, yeah. 2010s Okada though, yeah.
Jonah from Norfolk. I've read that Dave isn't the biggest fan of comedy type matches. What are his thoughts on Sami Zayn versus Johnny Knoxville from a few WrestleManias ago?
I have nothing against comedy matches. I wasn't a fan of Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville though. I think there was too many like botched parts of it. Like, I get why, people loved it, and it's fine. People loved it. So it's fine. But no, it wasn't. Hey, that one wasn't my favorite match by any means, but I've seen, I'm not a big fan of Toru Yano matches, but I've seen Toru Yano matches that I think are brilliant. So I'm not like a negative on it, but when they don't, I will say this, when a comedy match doesn't work, it's really bad.
Right.
But some of them work. So, and they're, there's promotions with, DDT, the first half of the show's all comedy matches and it works. And that's the nature of the company. WWE does lots of comedy matches and sometimes they are absolutely terrible and sometimes they work.
Rolling on with Ask Meltzer Anything. Question from Ryan in Brampton. He wants to know, where do the Bucks and FTR rank compared to teams like Misawa Kawada or the Midnight Express? I think what he's going for is, teams like FTR and the Bucks are often by fans of this era being held up as these are some of the greatest tag teams of all time. Clearly he's got his picks here. So Misawa Kawada, Midnight Express, Bucks, FTR, where do you put them all in relation to each other?
Well, here's the thing. FTR and the Bucks have far more longevity as a team than those teams. The other ones, like they've had basically a career together. The other ones both were a couple of years. There was 2 versions of Midnight Express, but they're both only a couple of years each. So for longevity, the Bucks and the Briscoes is another one. Both Briscoes, Jack and Jerry, Dory and Terry, are we're talking about decades together, though, Bob and Jumbo were long periods together. Those were great long-term teams. Midnight Express, I think that they're the Midnight Express are the foundation of actually in many ways, both the Bucks and FTR, although a lot of people will go Arn and Tully for FTR, but they're both part of the foundation of both. So they led to it. But it's different eras. And, the other era is going to build from the era. Misawa and Kawada were 2 fantastic singles wrestlers that had incredible tag team matches. Man, it's just different. It's hard for me to compare because as 2 great singles wrestlers, Misawa and Kawada are better, they're better. But they're not really a tag team as much as 2 fantastic singles wrestlers who for a couple of years were put together as a team and had fantastic matches. So if you're talking about all time and longevity counts, honestly, I'd rate the Bucks and FTR above those teams, but I would not say they were, were they better than the Midnight Express? I would never say that because the Midnight Express were the foundation of what the modern tag team evolved into and everything like that. And they built upon the teams like the Steamboats and the Youngbloods and the real great working teams, Pattersons and Stevens, those type of teams. So I can't fairly rate them other than I will say right. if you throw in longevity, then then the Bucks and FTR would be ahead.
I'm surprised rock and roll didn't come up in that conversation more.
Well, they had a lot of longevity too. You know, so I mean, that would be, you know, when it comes to long-term longevity, they beat everyone, I think.
Okay, let's go to Marianne in Vancouver. We know Dave is the all caps wrestling journalist, but do you have any interests or hobbies outside of wrestling?
Yeah, but I don't do them. You know what I mean? I love,
okay, like what? Like space travel or what?
I love bike riding. I love watching sports.
Yeah.
I love going to movies. I mean, there's a lot.
What's the last movie you went to? Do you remember the last movie you actually went to the theater?
Okay, I've seen a couple movies, not at the theaters, but at home.
Yeah.
I saw like 80 for Brady a couple weeks ago, believe it or not. But the last movie I went to at the theater was that Michael Jordan movie. It was
Air. Yeah.
Air, because of Sonny Vaccaro being the key figure in that movie. And I do not know Sonny Vaccaro, but Zane Bresloff was best friends with Sonny Vaccaro, and I was best friends with Zane Bresloff. So I heard Sonny Vaccaro's name 4 times a week for probably 10 straight years. So it was almost like, I don't know him, but I mean, and Mike Tenay, who's another one of my friends, was great friends with Jimmy Vaccaro, who's Sonny's brother. So like I know, which I didn't know at the time, but the point is that, yeah, I was just so that'd be the last one I went to at the theaters.
All right. Well, next time, ride your bike to the theater. 2 birds stoned at once.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one here from Jesse in Hamilton. Is there anything in the last few years that genuinely surprised you? Has to be in ring, match, or storyline. So not business wise, I guess.
I get surprised all the time. So
yeah.
I can't even begin to come up with them. There's so many.
Okay. Rebecca in Indiana, are there go-to matches you watch over and over again?
Not now, but when I was a kid, there absolutely were. I probably watched, Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid, Ric Flair, Kerry Von Erich, Patterson and Slaughter, Steamboat and Ric Flair, Savage and Steamboat. I watched those matches God knows how many times, over and over and over and over again. A lot of the Japanese matches, Choshu and Fujinami, and every Tiger Mask match, the original Tiger Mask. I probably watched every TV match of that Tiger Mask over and over and over again, because at the time he was just so groundbreaking and so yeah, Tiger Mask, Dynamite Kid probably, would probably be more than any of them though.
Yeah, and I agree, man. Like, it's hard to watch enough wrestling from today, let alone going back and watching matches over and over again. Rob in Saskatoon has a couple questions. He says, what do you think of WOW, Women of Wrestling, and the more campy early 90s feel that it has? Do you think it should change, or does it have a place in the wrestling universe today?
Really hard to say, because nobody's ever tried to do something different. I would have liked to seen women wrestling done differently, but I don't know. Like, you don't know, like, it's what's going to be marketable or anything. It's basically Women of Wrestling is a copy of David McLean's idea, and David McLean's part of it. It's the idea that he's had from the 80s and Glow, and, every couple of years brings it back. It has its TV run. You can get it on TV because Glow was a success for a couple. It's really easy to get on TV with a concept that used to work, went away, but once worked. And Glow has become one of those things, especially with the reality show on, not the reality show, but the show that they aired on
the Netflix series. The
Netflix series brought that nostalgia back, which made it perfect to go back and to do that. I mean, because Glow wasn't really a big success, really, but it was there. And then that reality show, not reality, the Netflix show was so. I mean, I saw several episodes of that show was really good. So it opened the door for this thing to come back. But I mean, would a different form of a women's wrestling show do better? We just don't know. I think it would, but we just don't know, because nobody's really tried it that has had the right money and the right backing and the right exposure.
This is kind of a forecasting one. Where do you see AEW and WWE respectively in 10 years from now?
The media changes too much. Things change so much. I mean, WWE is going to be around, in some form. It's pretty much an institution. But where there's what happens with television and streaming and rights fees and everything like that's going to determine it. It's not going to be what they do. Everything's out of their hands, unless they just totally screw up like WCW, in which case it is in their hands. But WWE is not going to do that. And AEW will be a lesser version, of of that, in the sense that WWE will have opportunities that will keep them stronger financially until AEW gets to a certain level where it's competitive, which, because of that gap, is going to be very, very difficult to do. But if wrestling stays popular, there will be room for a number 2 brand, and it could be an incredibly great investment, in the sense of, if rights fees continue to go up and up and up, the sky's the limit for both of them. If they collapse, it's going to be rough going for both of them.
Dave, you've been awesome to answer all these questions. Thank you for that. We're going to do one more here. Last one is going to come from Jonathan in Halifax. Are there wrestlers from the past that Dave thinks are awesome, but don't necessarily get a lot of love from the fans?
Oh God, tons. But I mean, the whole thing is that I think that guys before 85, there's so little knowledge of them. There were, many, great performers that, but yeah, almost everyone, pre 85,
back when it was more of a not so widely dispersed business, you think?
I mean, there was a lot more wrestling, as far as live events, and guys worked a lot more, and it's a different style. But all of the top guys, if you were, I wouldn't say top guys, but all of the good working top guys don't get their due today because people didn't see them so far back, and history doesn't, this isn't like football where there's recorded histories and stuff. This one, there's a history, but it's kind of a made up history. Do guys like me talk about history in kind of a real way? Yeah. But I mean, the history that a lot of people see is like kind of your made up WWE history, and it is made up, and it only covers people that they want to focus on. Right. And they pretend that there is no Danny Hodge, or there is no whoever, there's Ray Stevens, who's not even in the WWE Hall of Fame, who was, in his era in the 60s, he was considered the greatest worker in the entire business. There is no, just God knows, the guys from Mexico. I mean, my God, there were so many great wrestlers that, that people don't really know about.
I think where the question comes from, though, and we'll wrap on this, is like, is there someone that stands out to you that maybe not even from history, but like was just never given their due by the fans? Like, this guy or girl was a better wrestler than they ever got credit for.
I mean,
that's a hard one. I know.
I'm sure there's plenty of them, but you know what? In most cases, someone would figure it out, and you know what I mean? It's like there's if anyone who's good, people are going to figure out that they're good. I mean, I could go in there and go Suzuka Minami, who was a 90s Japanese woman wrestler who nobody ever talks about because there were so many great All Japan women wrestlers, and she might have been like number 10 on the list, but she was phenomenal. I mean, and they all were. So, somebody like that. I mean, I think people do talk about Manami Toyota. It was, I just wrote about Toshio Yamada this week, actually, which would be a good one because, she was awesome. People don't, she was in Manami Toyota's shadow, then she got hurt. But nobody talks about her. And I wouldn't say like she's one of the 10 greatest of all time, but she worked with the greatest of all time, and she had some of the greatest matches. I mean, Toyo Yamada hair match was, one of the best matches I ever saw live. Toyota Yamada against Kansai and Ozaki, probably the greatest women's tag team feud in history. So she's there, in those great matches, but people don't really talk about her name that much. So maybe that's a real good one, Toshio Yamada.
Dave, you've been so generous with your time before the big trip, taking this out for the Ask Meltzer or anything. Thank you so much for this, man. I really do appreciate it. That's not just lip service. All the best, safe travels in the UK, and most importantly, have a good time out there, man. A lot of people are looking forward to seeing you there.
Okay, cool. All right. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Well, if you're listening to this as it posted, thank you for doing that. Get ready. All In is getting ready to hit our TVs any minute now. Or if you're listening throughout the week, hopefully you enjoyed the Ask Meltzer Anything. Next week, we get back to a regular show. We'll be talking more about Terry Funk, Bray Wyatt, and whatever else happens in the world of wrestling. Until then, as always, thank you for listening and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. I'll be seeing ya.